I'm Joanne Garside. I'm Professor of Nursing at the University of Huddersfield and have the pleasure of leading out on a portfolio of research exploring experiences of international nurses working in the UK.
I'm Charlene Pressley, a clinical academic at the University of Huddersfield, and I've been working with the research team over the last few years, considering international nurse retention. So firstly, before we begin to present the research, we'd like to say thank you to all of the many international nurses that have spoken with us over the past few years whilst we've undertaken this research at the University of Huddersfield. We've been looking into the experiences of international nurses, and we hope that we represent you well, and that our research enables you to have a sustained and fulfilling career working and living in England. So a really big sincere thank you, because this research and our findings that we talk about today are only possible because of you going out of your way to talk to us as a research team, and we really appreciate that.
To start this portfolio, we undertook a systematic literature review, exploring the global experiences of the framework of the following literature. So as part of the systematic review, we selected 27 international papers that met our inclusion criteria, and they were synthesised, and we identified 6 key themes that informed the follow-on research. The headlines of the 6 themes start with understanding individual motivations for migration. So this is key to ensure that international nurses are successfully integrated into the workforce. We split the motivations into 2 areas, so professional and personal motivations for migrations. So professional are reported as the international nurses' desire to learn more skills, to come and work in advanced healthcare systems, and to further their nursing careers. Whereas personal motivations are often that dream for better life and desire to provide a better future for them and their families. The second theme is about communication, and this is probably the most recurrent theme that's presented in the literature, and presents as a major barrier to that integration, particularly during that initial phase. And although many international nurses are conversant with more than one language and often very proficient in English, they find themselves needing to learn the nuances of the languages within the area that they're working and navigate that new linguistic and cultural world. The third theme is about the principles of professional realities. So throughout the literature, international nurses reiterated nursing is nursing, and at no point was there any reference to international nurses and their clinical competence. The major difference, however, is in professional realities, those team dynamics, models of nursing and population health that all differs depending on the original country of origin that international nurse is coming from, and in turn that shapes the experiences of international nurses integrating into their new environment. The fourth theme is about cultural displacement. And in the initial months following migration, international nurses can experience feelings of cultural displacement, challenging their personal identity. Within this context, social interaction is essential for that relationship building. And within the studies, many international nurses find themselves aligning themselves with other international nurses as a strategy for overcoming those challenges and accessing social support. Theme number 5, unfortunately, is overt racial discrimination, particularly by patients who, for example, only question the quality of care that they'd receive from an international nurse. So in this context, culturally sensitive leadership in these situations are key to ensuring zero tolerance of inappropriate racist and discriminatory behaviours. The final theme was facilitators for integration and adaptation. And it's important to acknowledge and understand that individuality and the learner status of the international nurse. The diversity of countries from which international nurses migrate mean that cultural backgrounds and nursing practices from which the international nurses originate vary significantly. So the learner needs are individual and transient and change over time. With international nurses, learner needs differing from those of ongoing career development. Meaningful recognition of prior experience is so important. We've got many international nurses coming to the country with many years of experience. So it's essential that this knowledge is recognised and careers are planned accordingly. So in summary, while international nurse experiences are multifaceted and complex, and in culturally compassionate and professional environments, international nurses can thrive. However, to effectively return this workforce in the longer term, we need to recognise the challenges that they experience and put improvements in place. The full paper and full details to all these themes can be provided on the link that links with this presentation.
Today, we're going to be talking to you about the international study that we completed on the international recruited nurses and their integration into the healthcare workforce, where we undertook a mixed method study. Nursing deficits are growing, and healthcare providers in developed countries must address the challenges of ethically building a sustainable workforce without a continued excessive reliance on overseas recruitment. To secure this, a focus on the long-term retention of international recruits is paramount. As part of our research portfolio on international nurse retention, we undertook a mixed method study exploring the motivation, migrations and experiences of initial integration for international nurses recruited within the healthcare system of England. Applying quantitative and qualitative research methods, we considered internationally recruited nurses' demographics and professional backgrounds, motivation migrations, application processes, arrivalment settlement, and initial experiences of integration into the workforce, along with supporting their future aspirations. 655 internationally recruited nurses who had recently commenced working in England took part in our study. Results revealed a population of international nurses that were highly educated and vastly experienced. Career development and desires to improve quality of life were the primary motivations for migration. Participants indicated a perception of being well supported during the initial application and arrival stage. However, some did experience a degree of challenge during that initial workplace integration, involving fluctuating levels of support and appointments into positions that did not necessarily match their many years of experience or multiple previous qualifications. Our findings illuminated the difficulties nurses can face during that initial arrival and integration stage and the apparent impact on well-being. Conclusions argue that it is the consistent responsibility of employers in developed countries to protect the experiences of international recruits, and this can be done by investing in solutions as a key retention strategy. Our study that we'll share the links to goes into much more of the detail of what we can do to support international nurses to get off to a flying start living and working in England. Thank you.
Third piece of research that we've undertaken as part of the portfolio was exploring the longer term experiences and career progression of international nurses working in the NHS. This piece was on the back of the recognition that of migration motivations and the common driver for international nurses being career and professional development. So our mixed methods study included 2 phases. The first phase was quantitative and compared trends in career progression for international nurses and domestic nurses. The second phase involved interviews of international nurses that had worked in the NHS for longer than 5 years to explore enablers and barriers to career progression. Again, the full paper can be found in the attached link. So initially, the first phase, the quantitative phase, included over 600,000 nurses registered on the ESR system. 496,741 of those nurses were domestic nurses, and 115,171 were international nurses. That works out about 81% were domestic nurses and 18% were international nurses. So this data was recorded for a period from 2014 to 2021, and we wanted to explore the difference, or compare the difference in career progression throughout the bands for international nurses and domestic nurses. And what we found was, although, so in the band 5 category, proportionately, we've got 75% domestic nurses and 24% international nurses, but exploring those that progress, we've only got 15% of international nurses progressing from band 5 to band 6, whereas we've got 84% of domestic nurses. So we're looking at a disproportionate amount of international nurses progressing compared to domestic nurses. And that trend follows through, as you'll see from the full paper, that trend follows through all the banding systems, but because of the numbers, it's only significant in the band 5 to band 6 progression. We also looked at the time it took for domestic nurses to progress from band 5 to band 6, and the time that international nurses took to progress. In summary, it takes a domestic nurse approximately 5.8 years to progress from band 5 to band 6, whereas international nurses, it takes 6.8 years. So to summarise the findings from the quantitative element of this survey, progression occurs later and less frequently for international nurses than for domestic nurses. The difference is only significant for band 5 to band 6, but that pattern goes right through the banding system. In phase 2, we interviewed 22 international nurses with between 6 and 26 years of experience in the NHS. In summary, despite some initial inhibitions and introversion, international nurses describe real characteristic of mettle, resilience and determination to succeed. And the stories that they told us, they really experienced many hurdles to progress through that career ladder. One international nurse had 20 interviews before she managed to progress into a band 5 role. But once this group of international nurses had progressed, participants were showing how they successfully influenced change, were passionate about being role models for other international nurses. So what our study did was represent the voice of nurses that have progressed, albeit challenged and delayed, but through that empowerment and representation following succession, international nurses progress to be inspiring role models that will enable enhancing opportunities for career progression for future generations of international nurses.